Welcome our physical attendees. Welcome our virtual attendees for today's webinar. Today's webinar is courtesy of GSK. It is in celebration and commemoration of the World Pharmacists Day, whose theme was, what is our theme this year? Judy, what is our theme this year? Are you the mic? Okay, Pharmacy United in Action for a healthier nation. So we're having 292 participants who are joining us virtually. 292 who are joining us virtually. We'll begin when the virtual attendance has gotten to 350. We'll begin when the virtual attendance gets to 350. I'm waiting for the PSK National Executive Committee to join us at the physical venue. Our host and moderator will be none other than Dr. For those joining us virtually, so allow me to indulge you and ask you which part of the country you're joining us from and which branch you're joining us from. For those joining us virtually, on the chat box is enabled. Allow me to indulge you and tell me where you're joining us from, which part of the country and which part of our wonderful nation you're joining us from. So we begin when we get to 350 for our virtual attendees. For physical attendees, you're almost full. For those at home, you have the privilege of having your meals early and having a cup of coffee. For those who are here physically, I will hold you till we are done with the meeting today. So let me see what the chat box as well. I'll ask you to tell us where the guys are joining us from. So give us another, probably by 7:20 we should have begun. So give me 9 minutes. I do request for your 9 minutes of your time, and I do apologize for that. 7:20 we should have begun. So let us align everything technologically and see how best we are able to now get. On the chat box, kindly let me know where you're joining us from on the chat box. Just you can open the chat box. On the chat box, kindly let me know where you're joining us from, which part of our wonderful country you're joining us from. Enable the chat box, enable the yes, for online and virtual attendance, kindly write it on the chat box. Where are you joining us from? Thank you so very much, Dr. Sylvia, for joining us. Sound is low. That is Dr. Sheila Omondi, the personal assistant to the KMPDU Secretary General. Dr. Shihal from Eldoret. Dr. Yegon from Kericho, Sister Mariam from Busia, Valentine Naitore from Meru County, Sister Pauline, all the way from South Sudan. Karibu once again, Sister Pauline. Dr. Thuku from Nairobi, Dr. Masi from Kapenguria, Miriam Obino from Kuwait. Oh, wonderful. We have people from Kuwait, Vihiga County, Jerusa, and Dr. Saina from MTRH. Thank you so very much for joining us. This wonderful day. We will begin once we get to, wow, we are at 3:49. So we only left one person to begin, but I asked for your permission to allow me to begin at 7:20 p.m. For those who are joining us virtually. Our host for today is Dr. Anis Rohitula, Dr. Sinclair from Transoia, Dr. Tole from Lamu. So give me 9 minutes to keep some housekeeping things, then I'll get back to you in a short while. Asante sana.
You have the customer.
Give us 4 minutes. Give us 4 minutes. What's the answer? What's the answer? Esteemed guests for tonight, our online attendees, respected seniors, honorable fellows who are joining us today, welcome to today's webinar. It's already 7:20, so we will have to begin. Allow me to first ensure that the physical attendance are well settled. I can see Secretary Hopak, Dr. Iwak. Dr. Iwak, I wait your Kamukunji to come to the end. Cohen and the President, once you let the President sit, I will allow us to begin the meeting. Dr. Iwak, you are the great limiting step. Asante. Ladies and gentlemen, without further much ado, as I had promised, us that 7:20 p.m. Without further much ado, let me welcome Dr. Anis Rahimtula to take us through today's program. Dr. Anis is our host for today. Dr. Anis,
thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Okay, when it was online, I expected people not to respond, but now we are here in person. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Great. It's so nice to be here with so many pharmacists, most of you older than me, so my respected seniors. Today marks the end of this year's World Pharmacist Day celebrations. We started last Saturday with Patient Safety Day, and we had events that took us all week. Yesterday we celebrated World Pharmacist Day, and today is like the, let's just say the icing on the cake. So welcome to today's event. I want to start by saying that we will begin with a few remarks from the President of PSK, and then we will go into the presentations, followed by some Q&As, and then we will have a cake cutting ceremony. And like they say, you have your cake and eat it too. So, and so those of you who are virtual, I think Hez will arrange to send you little emojis of cake so that you can also be part of the cake eating ceremony. So President, over to you.
Thank you. Everyone who's present here today, unmute yourself and say hi. Hi, everyone. Hi. Nice to see all of you. Protocols. Any chairman of companies or boards who are seated here? Any CEOs? Chief of parties, CEOs. I can see other CEOs. CEOs of hospitals. Yeah. Chair of departments. Chair of HOPAC. Yeah. And all esteemed colleagues. I don't know if I have any respected seniors. Yes, honorable fellows. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So for me, it's a great honor. I don't think I've ever been to a PSK World Pharmacists Week that was lit like this week. Yeah, that culminated today. Who contradicts or who can affirm to that? This was one of the most lit PSK weeks. Nani ana support? Those who are here are raising their hands. Well, that's what I was looking for. I should be looking at which camera if I'm talking to the guys on. Oh, this one. Yeah, so really, thank you for honoring us. We saw branches that were active, 17 in number. Ground activities, for me, I would say, you know, the way they say politics is grassroots. Yeah, I think where we are going, it's really, if you're talking about impacting the patient, it's about grassroots. Are you where the patient is? Yeah, these are lessons we learned from the last, you know, we fielded candidates in the last elections, and one of them is in the house. I can see Dr. Fohen. He ran in Isuka West. And one of the things we learned is you have to be grounded on, you know, you have to be known as ule mtua. Sasa wewe ni ule mtua ni, yeah? I know, yes, you want to call yourself ule daktari or something, but it's okay, even ule daktari wa, yeah? So for me, it's really to challenge us as we reach the tip, the climax of these events, and where we are today is, what are you doing on the ground that you're known as Ule Daktari on YouTube? I can see, oh wait, I'm looking at the sister. I need to wear, I started wearing glasses, so I can't see well. So where is your sister? Oh, there you are. Yeah, so Daktari on YouTube ako pale. So what else? What can you throw? Daktari wa? CCC, any Daktari wa CCC hapa? Mitishamba, yeah. Pharmacognosy and pharmaco. Pharmacognosy. But really, for me, it's just to challenge each and every one of us. What are we? You know, what are we to be known for? So myself personally, I'm known as Ule Daktari wa SMEs, healthcare SMEs, supporting healthcare SMEs, especially pharmacists. There's no month that passes without me meeting with young pharmacists or any pharmacy entrepreneur who's looking to improve efficiencies in their business, yeah, and their practice. So what are you doing on the grassroots that's around or enabling you to be known as Ule Daktari wa? So again, when we meet next year, I would like to hear those stories. Yeah, Ule Daktari wa emceeing yuko hapa. So I would like to hand over to Dr. Adiz. So yeah, so thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Louis. On Saturday, we had a World Pharmacists Day Inter-University Challenge. And part of the team, the KEFSA team is here that helped to organize it. So they are very young. But this MC, who was the Secretary General, he was making so much fun of you UON guys. You know, the rest of these guys are all UON because they are all so old that when they all graduated from UON. So now, don't say anything wrong against UON here because all of these guys are UON. So we learn things as we go along. Even the students teach me things. So last week, I was sitting in the cardiology clinic, and the doctor was asking the patient, he said, is everything okay? So he says, yes. He says, have you been using the patches like I told you? You put one patch every 6 hours for 2 weeks. He says, yeah, I've been doing that. He says, so then where's the problem? He says, now he removed his shirt. I won't remove my shirt, some of you will leave, but he removed his shirt and there was patches everywhere. So sometimes at pharmacists, we forget to give the last mile. Remove the old patch and put a new one. So, so if you know, you know. Great. Our first speaker is, I won't use the word my girlfriend, but 4 years ago, we took a picture. I don't know if she remembers, but it was me, Winnie, and Dr. Sylvia. It was at USIU for the Inter-University Challenge. And she was so much smaller at that time. But now you'll see what she meant when I say that. But Dr. Winnie Ganga, welcome.
You have just declared me a girlfriend, as the state that I am in. Yes, sir. So this looks like we are on TV, so it's pressure. Let's put the slides. All right, so Dr. Winnie, for those who don't know me, I'm a Regulatory Affairs Director, meaning the Daktari wa Regulatory, as I heard from our president. I work for GSK, and I'm a pharmacist. Yes, a proud alumni of University of Nairobi. And a class of, yeah. I'm just here. Yeah, just ask your colleague. I think I was very clear. I don't want you to be left calculating my age, and we have a presentation to go. So I'm here to share about getting the job done reliably, given that today is, we are continuing to celebrate World Pharmacy Day, continuing to get leads on World Pharmacy Day. So we'd like to talk about authenticity in antibiotic practice and getting the job done reliably. How do we do this to ensure that everyone plays their role in actually providing authentic, credible antibiotic practice? So we are getting now into the details. Thank you. Where am I pointing? Bao did not give us a chance to practice our. Or you just do it. Okay. So of course, this is in relation to today's topic, which is on antimicrobial resistance and the role that we are playing around it. So a quick fact around antimicrobial resistance, which I'm sure that we all are aware of. WHO has stated that this is one of the top 10 global threats facing humanity. And mostly it's around the misuse and abuse of antibiotics, as we all know. And it's being done, of course, for the humans and also the animals. As we all know, chicken farming business is booming, I think, unfortunately, due to some antibiotics being overused and abused. However, my session today is more or less speaking about the quality of the product that can result in AMR. So because of my background, which is GSK, a manufacturer, we'll really talk about the quality of the product and the role that we are all playing, united in action for a healthier world to make sure that we are providing the quality products in the markets. Okay, next I should proceed. So in terms of poor quality antimicrobial, we've known that there's an increase in the emergence and spread of AMR because of that. Of course, the weak strains are killed while the virulent strains survive and they continue to reproduce. And of course, that results in antimicrobial resistance. So we'd like to just look at substandard and falsified antibiotics. WHO defines substandard medical products as those which are authorized but fail to meet the quality standards or specifications. It also defines falsified medical products as those that are deliberately fraudulently misrepresent their identity, composition, or source. So definitely, we are talking about substandard products and falsified, their presence in the market, and their resulting treatment failure that results in AMR. Of course, it's happening to patients across all ages. So a few facts around antibiotics, because today we won't talk about a lot about antibiotics. 50% of the counterfeited antibiotics are actually beta-lactams. And the beta-lactams that have been reported as substandard and counterfeit have been reported in over 50 countries. So of course, Kenya being one of them, meaning that we're actually living and breathing around substandard and counterfeit products. However, low quality products, which are, as we said, substandard, have been authorized. However, they have low quality. So this low quality or poor quality are actually 8 to 10 times more reported than counterfeits. So that speaks to us really having a bigger threat in the market of low quality products in the market. How are they found? Through illegal street markets. Of course, probably as a pharmacist here, you might find someone walking around with a very nice looking price list. You wonder, why is product X looking so much cheaper? So those are questions you need to ask yourself, because of course it's more lucrative in that sense that you'll end up picking such products. So they're also available via unregulated websites. We've seen some work in Jumia, LinkedIn. I don't know whether you get those emails. I keep getting emails from LinkedIn saying that they are exporters and they're going to bring the for me products at half price. So you really need to question those people. If you are not, I'm sure none of you are among them. So question the authenticity of the products from that sense. All right, so when we talk about factors that contribute to poor quality drugs, we are more or less talking about the factors that lead to substandard drugs. There's reduced stability of drugs in developing countries. Of course, stability meaning that the pack that you have in the market, is it conducive for your environment? Because as we all know, we are in different climatic zones. For Kenya, we are in zone 4B. Are we actually getting a pack that is fit for use for our markets? Those are the questions we need to be asking ourselves as pharmacists. We need to check that a good manufacturing process was observed. Quality control, poor quality control during manufacture is a key aspect that results in substandard drugs. Also having non-standardized pharmacopoeias. So for those of you who are in MTCs, procurement committees, tendering committees, these are some of the things you really need to check, because I know as manufacturers, we share a lot of this information. We are being asked for dossiers, and this is a chance to actually interpret and see whether that composition that is provided is fit for use for our patients. Of course, procuring through unauthorized channels. We talked about illegal street markets, getting them from unauthorized websites. When the deal is too good, of course, think twice. An unvalidated distribution process. So you probably might have someone with a pack, but you really don't know where it came from. How did they bring the product into the market? You really need to question about the distribution, because it only takes one small mistake for the product to lose its quality, efficacy, and safety. And of course, poor surveillance about expirations and poor storage conditions result in substandard drugs. I think counterfeits, we are very much aware of the crisis on counterfeits, but today my focus is really around substandard and poor quality products, which is, as I said, it's 8 to 10 times more than the counterfeits. So what is our role? As we said, we are making sure that, as per the theme of pharmacists, is to unite together to make sure that we are providing a healthier world. How do we do this? In our specific roles, we have to be very vigilant in what we do. And it speaks around the drug selection. I mentioned MTCs, procurement committees. There's a big role to play in ensuring that the product that you're providing to the patient is of value. And you need to check, like, if it's content, impurity, endotoxins, the particle matters, all this information is actually available. Let's say if it's meds, we always provide this information. So you have the information at your fingertips. It's just to see, in terms of choosing the criteria of which product you're going to go with, or which brand, you really need to look into the specifications and confirm that they are within within the limits. Yeah. The other aspect is around, of course, the API content. You need to check that it's going to really work and maintain the same level of dosing throughout the period of use. When you're talking about excipients and inactive ingredients, you need to check the quality. You might find that the excipients quality or active ingredients is poor. And what does that mean? It might result in poor solubility and poor permeability, meaning that the targeted pathogen, therefore, does not get targeted, or rather, and of course that results in our famous word, EMR. Yeah, so packaging and storage, I'll get into the details around that. I have like 72 slides on packaging and storage. Brace yourselves. Can we move to the next? So for me, this slide really speaks about our theme for today, which is Pharmacy Uniting for a Healthier World. Yeah, I know we are all very familiar with the theme for today. And so in terms of research and development, of course, we all play a role in every pharmacist here actually ends up. This is more or less the whole united front that pharmacists should take. From the point of research and development, what are we doing to ensure that the product is a novel product in the market is actually accessible. So there's a lot of work from the regulatory pharmacist. I'll really stay on this slide for some bit, so just keep it. When we talk about the manufacturer, what are we doing? So this is my chance to talk about what GSK we are doing, especially when we're looking at beta-lactams in terms of manufacturing the correct product. Yeah. So of course, as beta-lactams, we all know the sensitivity of clavulanic acid in terms of it being hygroscopic and also unstable at high temperatures and pH. So these factors have to be put into consideration during the manufacturing process. And how is this done for us as GSK? The first thing that's done is that we ensure that the product, all the clavulanic acid is actually manufactured from one factory across, that will be supplied across for the whole world, just to make sure the quality is observed. We also, in terms of, I think this is general knowledge for every manufacturer, that of course there should be the use of an anhydrous blend during manufacture. The idea is to keep moisture away. So you use pre-dried ingredients. You also consider the manufacturing process. So you use actual dry granulation in terms of for the tablets. And not only that, in terms of making sure that that product that you have produced, the recommended is aqueous film coating, just to make sure you're covering and minimizing the drug degradation. The environment used to prepare this is a dehumidified air and controlled environment that also controls the relative humidity. We actually also do active air sampling, just to make sure that we're monitoring the environment in the factory. For suspensions, there is addition of silicon dioxide to help maintain a dry environment. So always be on the lookout for these key things. Even this you can even see on the packs. If it's not a GSK pack, you can actually just look at the excipients that are listed on the pack. So we also make sure that the excipients are at anhydrous blend. And of course, as we all know, in terms of using, you include water at point of dispensing for 7 days. In terms of packaging, that's another key area around manufacturing. Strictly controlled environment, so that even the packs are stored in a controlled environment. And even the pack itself, in terms of, you'll notice, of course, the desiccated pouch. Everything actually now has a reason. I hope you're seeing the aha moments. So the desiccated pouch is just to make sure that the moisture is, of course, controlled, and then it's put in the blister pack. In terms of stability, the idea is, of course, always to optimize product stability and also ensure that you still have a palatable product. So you have to balance the two in terms of the stability aspects. There's also a mention there on anti-counterfeits. What are the things that you need to check out for when you're deciding which products you will put into your pharmacy. You check around the covert, overt, and forensic markers. There's always something on the packs that helps you to determine that this product is actually catered for anti-counterfeiting, so that it's not a pack that that is easily counterfeited. Storage and distribution is key, because after doing all that, manufacturing, all those special steps being taken, if you're not storing it and distributing it in the right manner, then you really failed the manufacturer. So it's important you put those considerations of storage and transportation, and also look at make sure that you're buying from authorized dealers or authorized importers as well, so that you are also safeguarding the patient and uniting for a healthier world. Yeah. So in terms of, I think I want to get into, of course, for the patient, the hospital pharmacist, everybody who handles the patients knows that at point of compliance, I mean, ensuring appearance of use is key, and taking the correct measures in terms of storing the product in the correct environment. Yeah, so you've had a lot around the process. Just to pick on a few elements on, again, on amoxiclav. We said the hygroscopic nature of clavulanic acid. Also, amoxicillin is sensitive to moisture. So there's several things that you need to put into consideration when you're packaging and storing. So these are the slides I want to just talk about packaging and the storage conditions. Humidity, temperature, light, pH. We are responsible to making sure that the product that the commodity we are managing retains its stability and its quality. So you have to be very cognizant of those 4 elements, which is humidity, temperature, light, and pH. If you don't believe me, I have studies that actually show the differences in terms of packaging and storage studies, and also the quality aspects. There's a study here in Thailand. You can look at the quick areas that are highlighted there, 131 samples, 42 drugs. The area of analysis was on assay, weight variation, content uniformity, and dissolution and water determination. Next. This one will really go fast. So the results, as you can see in Thailand, 7% failed. They failed the assay of clavulanic acid. For the assay of clavulanic acid, it failed in the 2 failed in content uniformity of clavulanic acid. As you can see, the key weak product or link, which is very vital, of course, for the beta-lactam is clavulanic acid, and several also failed dissolution testing. In terms of packaging, you can see again, out of 7% failed, with 1 failed sample, swollen blisters with defects in tablets. Of course, all these are leading to the degradation of the drug, resulting in less API content to the patient, which results in AMI. Again, the storage conditions, 7%, still the same. And in summary from this study, manufacturing processes and drug formulations, such as non-uniformity of drug content, non-uniformity of drug film coating, are some of the factors that are affecting the quality of the product. In terms of packaging, we've seen areas that are affecting is improper and unprotectable packaging. So you really need to look at the packaging that you have in your facilities. Storage conditions of improper temperature and humidity controls, light and exposure as well. A quick study here from Cambodia. Again, they were checking the effects of packaging and storage for the same brand, same molecule amoxiclav. They sampled 59 samples from 48 outlets It was open for both foreign and local, so it covers both aspects. From there, you can see alarming statistics that 20% failed. And in terms of failing packaging, the plastic covers peeled off, a strip, some strips were missing, and there was unclear scored breaking. So all these are products that are definitely in our market, just that we need to know that they're definitely, in terms of quality, they're questionable. From the quality aspects, 13% failed, 16.9% failed content uniformity, and 33% failed in dissolution tests. So that was Cambodia, that was Thailand. Back here at home, we have a study for Kenya on amoxicillin formulations. They sampled 106 different brands. 53 samples were analyzed for uniformity of weight, chemical content, and dissolution tests. 19, so we had 86% passing, especially, please note this is amoxicillin. Remember, it's not a combination, so amoxicillin is not as unstable as when it's combined with clavulanic. So I think 86 is not good, but it means that actually whoever took an antibiotic to treat a specific ailment did not get cured. So it should always, our standard is to get at 100%. We can move to the next one. Yeah, next. Okay, so when you look at combination now again, we find when it's mixed up, amoxicillin and clavulanic tablets, only 33% passed for both content and dissolution tests. These are quite alarming results, and these are products that are actually in our market and that we are dispensing as pharmacists. Move to the next one. So, okay, we can go to the summary. So in summary, the results highlight the presence of poor quality amoxicillin formulations, of course, leading to treatment failure. The situation of antibiotic quality in the market is really serious, that we have to take several steps. I talked about substandard products, which is more or less around that discussion. This is a study of the Amoxiclav oral suspension, where 3 different brands were picked. It's a study in Yemen. You can just go to the... So the chemical test was done for concentration of amoxicillin and clavulanic acid. The physical tests were also picked around pH test, water content, and the likes. And the testing was done on day 1, 3, 7, and 10. Go to the end. It talks about the longer, of course, we stay with the product, the higher the pH, the higher the change in color. You notice the change in color. There's a bitter taste, there's a change in smell. So this was as you go along after having reconstituted. Go to the next. Yeah, and in summary, stability is defined as the capacity of a drug substance or product to remain within its specified, established specifications, and is also to maintain its identity, strength, quality, and purity. As you can all see from even the studies, therefore the stability was impacted, the quality of the products were impacted, and even to the point, some were impacted even before use, not even after mixing. So there's a lot there to put into consideration. So my take-home message is, of course, as we all know, AMR is one of our biggest threats. As we said, from WHO, it's top 10. One of the causes of AMR, other than the misuse and abuse, which I know we are also very clear about, is that poor quality, is the aspect of a poor quality antimicrobial or antibiotic. The substandard drugs, as we said, can be found anywhere and are actually present within the pharmacies, within the clinics, within the hospitals. A key area to look into is the manufacturing process, the quality controls during manufacturing, as this can also result in poor quality drugs. And of course, apart from manufacturing, a key area to look into is what responsibility are we taking to ensure that we are storing the product and distributing it in the right conditions to maintain the quality and the stability. Some few facts around amoxiclav, I think, as I wind up. I don't think I need to read all this, but this is in the leaflets, it's in the prescribing information. So careful inquiry should be made concerning previous hypersensitivity reactions to penicillins. I think you're all aware of that. Should be used in caution in patients with evidence of hepatic dysfunction. No adjustment in dose is required in patients with creatinine clearance greater than 30 ml per minute. It's not recommended in patients with creatinine of less than 30. Prolonged use may also occasionally result in overgrowth of non-susceptible organisms. And also during administration of high dose of amoxicillin, it's advisable to maintain adequate fluid intake and observe urine output in order to reduce the possibility of amoxicillin crystalluria. GSK is committed, of course, there is the line. If you have any issues around the safety of the product, there's a quick email that you can reach out to. And the prescribing information is actually available in the leaflet. So that was just a small part of it. Yeah. I hope let me hand it back to my boyfriend.
Thank you, girlfriend. So in case you missed the message, it was East or West, GSK is the best. And I'll send my bill tomorrow. So like I told you, we had this inter-university challenge this weekend. So I want to give you some of my learning points. This is one that I heard from Hezron. I was talking to one of the girls. He says, not sure what my creatinine clearance is, but I can't just get you out of my system. And then this other line is from Ivy. She was talking to this boy and she says, you must be regulated by the PPB because you treat, cure, and prevent my broken heart. And then the best is always for last. So Mbao was there, he was talking to some of these young girls from second year. He says, can I bother you for an aspirin tablet? Just looking at you from across the room is giving me heart-related pains. Our next speaker is Dr. Sarah Gato, and she is the clinical pharmacist at Mama Lucy Hospital. I'm not sure, is it Mama Lucy Kibaki or Mama Lucy Hospital? I'm not sure which of those two had more power, but anyway, Dr. Sarah, is she joining us virtually? Oh, here she is.
Yeah. I don't think I'll be using the pointer. You just follow my discussion through. So, acha nichukue mwa Kenya. Sorry for taking your time. So my name is Serah. I work at Mama Lucy. I'm a new graduate. My lecture is here. I think at the end of the day, I'll be given some marks so that I check whether I can pursue my PhD. So I'm glad to be here. It's an honor to stand in front of pharmacists and discuss antimicrobial resistance patterns in Kenya. So first of all, welcome. Let me take this opportunity to just say welcome again. Dr. Winnie, thank you. You've done a good job. I actually thought that when we're talking about counterfeits, you're just looking at the active ingredient. I didn't know there's something to do with the packaging and the humidity and all that, but I'm sure you're going to share the slides with us because your presentation is very detailed. Personally, I'd like to go through it again, just in case I see something out there that does not match to what you discussed today. I think I'll be able to report that. So I also want to take this opportunity to appreciate all the pharmacists in all the sectors. I think I only know majority of us who are working in the public hospitals. I don't know some of you in the private hospitals, but I'm thinking after this we'll have a proper network where we're going to be discussing AMS and AMR in a proper way. So to all the pharmacists at the AFI House, the board, the community sector, the private hospitals, the NGOs, I know you're all doing something in regards to AMS and AMR. So I just want to say that for the last five years or so, your unique position in the healthcare system has actually made AMS visible to all our partners and to all stakeholders. So when I go to a county and talk about AMS, I know there's a pharmacist who is a champion in that county, and I know there's a way we can actually link up and hook up and actually have more discussions on the same. So I just have a special thanks to Dr. Tanui. I hope he's watching. Dr. Tanui, Dr. Evelyn Wasambula. She's been a national champion on AMS and AMR. I think we all know her. And there's Dr. Tanui, who's now taken over from Evelyn. Then we also have Dr. Wanga from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board. So here to became a coffee cover. It was not for this national AMS champions. I don't think I could have made it today or actually have the data that I'm going to be discussing today. So asanteni sana, those are my bosses. They've been very active in AMS activities. So I just want to say something that all of us pharmacists, we have been involved in AMS in our own various ways. We had MTM ending up, I think it was last week. So I'm hoping that one day when I walk into a community pharmacist, then I'll find MTM and antimicrobial therapy working together. For the clinical pharmacists, I know you're doing your DTPs in the clinical ward rounds. So I'm hoping that we'll move on, or rather we'll upgrade what we are doing after today's presentation. So some of us have tried to implement the national AMS guideline that was launched in 2017 in our own way, and we appreciate that. Some counties have gone ahead and they've launched strategic plans, both at the county level and the hospital level. And we've noted that some pharmacists, clinical pharmacists, pharmacovigilance pharmacists, you've become the focal AMS persons in this county. So we really appreciate that. AMS committees have been formed at county level, at hospital level, and we've seen that most pharmacies are using the committee as a platform to create awareness of what AMS is all about. Cindy, am I saying something that are you guys involved in the AMS activities in your counties? I hope you are, and I hope you have a pharmacist as an AMS focal person, because that's the best person to have in that position. So let me just begin by saying that we are discussing AMR patterns in Kenya. I just have four objectives, sorry. I just have 4 objectives, a brief introduction. We're also going to try and look at the trends of AMR in USA and Europe. And then we will look at the AMR surveillance report. And then after that, I'll probably try and understand what you guys are doing in your facilities, at the community level, at the community pharmacists, the big bosses up there at the house, the board. Hoping that you will tell us what is your role as a pharmacist in AMS and AMR activities. So, I just want to ask, is AMR a global concern? Do you think it's something that third world country, I think we are now a developing country, do you think it's something that we need to be concerned? Or do we just continue saying that this AMR era is not with us? Is it a yes or a no? It's a yes. I believe mimi become a preacher, natakanga amen. So I'd like to hear a yes. So is it a yes or a no? Yes. So it's a yes, because we have immune resistance mechanisms are emerging and spreading globally. And this is actually threatening the ability to treat common infectious diseases. I'll just give you a personal experience right now when we are doing the ward rounds. Sometimes when we start self-reaction on a patient, you'll expect that patient to go home after 5 to 7 days. Whether you do the 1 gram BD or the 2 grams OD or the 2 grams BD for meningitis, you actually expect that patient to go home. But unfortunately, that's not the case. These patients are staying. They are staying in the hospital, and that has become a problem. One, because there's prolonged illness. Secondly, there's prolonged stay in the hospital, and that means I have to keep seeing that patient all the time, because when you go for a ward round, in my experience, you just want to see that patient, have a treatment plan for that patient, alafu uende nyumbani, si ndio? Kuna clinical pharmacist here anafanya ward round. Or when you have somebody who comes to a community pharmacy, if you do your proper diagnosis properly, you want to give them azithromycin, 3 days, 5 days, and they come back and say that you've done a good one. So for now, we are saying that treating common infections is a problem. We had seen that in Europe, we have seen it in the US, but now the reality is that AMR is here with us. So that has caused prolonged illness, prolonged stay in the hospital. For community pharmacists, you have to keep seeing the patient over and over again, even after making a referral to a physician. And that means there's a high, or rather there's a financial burden to me as a healthcare giver, and secondly to the family. That means if a patient, I've given an example of ceftriaxone, if the patient is supposed to stay in the hospital for 5 days, now they are staying for 10 days. So that means the nurse will be worn out. I will be worn out because I don't know what I'm dealing with anymore. And then I will start doing guesswork. You get. So at the end of the day, if the patient is not managed well, you will lose the patient through death, okay? So secondly, the reason why it's still a global concern is because without effective antimicrobials for prevention and treatment of infections, there are some medical procedures that are now becoming a high risk. One is transplant, kidney transplant. When you think about your relative going for a kidney transplant, you will think twice because AMR is here with us. So sometimes our surgeons, what they're doing right now is we have something called surgical prophylaxis, where you give a dose of an antibiotic 72 hours before the patient goes to theater. And then now when they come out, you're supposed to monitor whether they have an infection or if they don't have an infection. But now we are in an era where we are not sure whether the surgical prophylaxis can work. So our patients are actually at risk. Those who are going in for organ transplantation, our cancer, chemotherapy patients, the patients who have diabetes, we have to think of how to manage these patients because of AMR. They are immunocompromised, so you can't just think about empirical treatment. And then we are saying that major surgeries now are becoming a risk. You'll have to think twice because I've said that surgical prophylaxis is not something that we can rely on. I'm glad we have our treatment guidelines, but the way things are going, there's need to think twice as pharmacists. Like now, when a patient is going in and they have chemo, or it's a diabetic patient, or they've had previous surgeries before the one that is about to happen. So when somebody comes to you and asks you, do you think the patient should go in for surgery, or do you think they should just, hold on? So we are at that era where we are saying that some surgeries are actually a high risk. We need to think twice. I think for the last 2 years or so, I don't know whether we've been coming to our AMS, AMR meetings. There's somebody from Ministry of Agriculture that has been talking about their journey of the hip surgery. I don't know whether we know that. And he's called Dr. Karaoke. Dr. Karaoke came this year and also last year. Last year he was in a wheelchair. This year he came on crutches, I think. And he went through a hip surgery. The first time he went to different hospitals, he was being treated empirically. Like if this doesn't work, he's just switched to something. There was a lot of switching of antibiotics. He is the one who made a personal decision and said, let me just do an AST test and see what is bothering me. And that is what had saved his life. So this year he came back and said that he has gotten better and is no longer on antibiotics. So we are saying hip replacement or hip surgeries, they are high risk, together with the cardiothoracic surgeries, okay? So we need to think twice as pharmacists moving forward. Also to be there. This slide is a bit straightforward. So what accelerates AMR? One, livestock and fisheries, when the antibiotics are used as growth promoters in animals and fish, that accelerates AMR. Improper antibiotic prescribing and irrational use of antibiotics. Those who work in hospitals, I think when you do your ward round, today you see a patient, they were on ceftriaxone. Tomorrow when you go back, another physician or somebody else, a prescriber has decided to switch them to something else. So there's a lot of irrational use of antibiotics. For the community pharmacist, especially places where people are trying to think of money instead of the health of the patient, people just use antibiotics as, it's become part of OTC. This is our country, Kenya, with a lot of help us. So many men. And then Dr. Winnie has captured the adulteration of drugs very well. I don't need to repeat that. So what is the scope of the problem? One, after the launching of these guidelines in 2017, we still have a lack of funds and commitment to the antimicrobial stewardship program. Then we are in this next slide. Sorry, scope of the problem. Yes, that is where we are. So I'm discussing this based in what I have found as a pharmacist in the last few years, ever since I came across the word AMS. After the launching of the guidelines in 2017, we still don't have funds, and there is a lack of commitment in AMS programs. For those pharmacists who are working in the county level, I think they'll tell you that it is a challenge to actually find a partner to support you in the AMS activities. We also have a problem with our labs. Our labs are not able to isolate organisms. They are doing cultures, yes, they are isolating the organisms, but they're not able to do a drug susceptibility test to tell you that this antibiotic is sensitive to this drug, this antibiotic is sensitive to this microbe or resistant to this. This has only happened with ARVs and TB. I think you've all seen our new TB guidelines, right? They were launched, I think, last year. This year we have new 2022 ARV guidelines. So that is happening with the heart treatment and the TB, but for antibiotics, there's a problem. So we don't have clinical microbiology labs that are able to, they're doing cultures yet, yes, but not all of them. But for the DST, there's a problem. I think one DST test, a DST costs around, is it 5,000 shillings? I don't know. But when we send our patients out there, because we don't do it at Mama Lucy, it's very expensive. One DST is 5,000 shillings, and yet the patient has not left the hospital. Between 5,000 shillings and 7,000 shillings. The other thing is, in terms of commitment in AMS program, a lot of hospitals lack empirical treatment guidelines. In fact, the only empirical treatment guidelines I've come across is Kenyatta National Hospital and Kakamega. Anyone from Kakamega, maybe you're watching online, that was a good job. They now have their own empirical treatment guidelines. So I only know of two. I'm not sure about the private hospitals. The other thing is lack of intervention on IPC and infection prevention and control. The interventions are there, yes, but we lack consistency. Those who work in public hospitals, okay, let me see how many work in public hospitals. You know, I've gone off. So sometimes when you go for a ward round, you will even be scared because they think that we manage non-farms, yeah, but we don't manage non-farms. Honestly, we don't manage non-farms. So sometimes akuna gloves, akuna, you know, the simple basic things, and that is actually a big challenge. Okay, and then the other thing is there's an increase in AMR in SSIs. SSIs are surgical site infections. So when a patient goes into the theater, they come out with something else. So sometimes you wonder, is there a problem in the theater, or is it the movement of the patient from theater to observation room to the surgical ward? So that is actually something else that needs to be dealt with in IPC. The other thing is we don't have SOPs in a lot of our public hospitals. We don't have SOPs on sterilization and disinfection. And I think some of these SOPs were developed during the COVID time. When you come into the pharmacy, you just want to spray everything. So I don't know whether there are SOPs to the spraying, or when you have those, when the surgeon is about to use the scalpel, I don't know whether there are any SOPs that are monitoring the processes of sterilization. So for IPC, I think that is what I have found. Maybe somebody else has something else they can contribute. You can see me later. So this I need, maybe Dr. Winnie can help me. I found this on a website, a reliable website. As of early 2012, 109 antibiotics were in the pipeline, and 70 of these were in the early stages of development. So 31 got to stage 2, then 9 got to stage 3 of the clinical trials. And then after that, they were like, we can't guarantee you guys anymore that you're going to have a molecule out of the 109. True or not true? Industrial pharmacists? Do we have any new molecule right now in the market? We don't have, right? We actually don't have. So that means if our AMR patterns are going high, or you have a high rate of AMR and no new molecule of antibiotic coming into the market, it means that now we are dealing with meropenem, we are dealing with, I've not seen colistin, but the likes of vancomycin. We already have microbes that are resistant to what we call new molecules in our Kenyan market. So let me, next slide. Let me just briefly mention what is happening in Europe. I don't have much information on that. But in Europe, there's a hospital that has reported that the patients who came in, half of them could not be treated on with fluoroquinolones. The patients who had UTI could not be treated with fluoroquinolones. And we all know that the moment a patient has UTI, which is the first drug, Cipro, senior, either Cipro or levofloxacin. Right now, information is out there, especially from this hospital. We can no longer use fluoroquinolones for managing the UTI caused by E. coli. The second thing is third generation cephalosporins cannot be used anymore in treating, but this is now treatment failure. So for gonorrhea, which is the first drug for treating the Syria condition. So we are saying that right now, treatment failure, the last resort of medicine for gonorrhea, that's that generation of cephalosporins, we can no longer use that. Okay? So that means you have to do a DST for that patient. So empirically, if you're treating a patient who has gonorrhea infection, you've done your third generation cephalosporin, if nothing is working, it means you need to do a DST. So that has been confirmed in all these countries. So now let's look at, I just want to share this slide, maybe to help us understand how serious AMR is. Okay, so this is a study that was done retrospectively in Europe. I think it was something Cambridge. From 1930 to 2007, how many years are those? 77, right? Is my math right? It is from 1930 to 2007. So if you look at this figure, it's trying to, let me just read it for you. A time lag between an antibiotic being introduced the very first time and the first appearance of resistance. For example, the yellow dot says that is the first time that antibiotic was used, and then the arrow says that that is the first time that resistance was detected. So what do you think happened in 1970? From 1970 coming to where we are, what do you think is the trend? The arrow has gotten shorter or smaller, meaning that for you to have a drug, for you to have a microbe that is resistant to one of those drugs, it actually needs only 1 year. So that means you can have kanamycin being, okay, just give you an example. You'll have aspironab being introduced in 1985, and by December of 1985, you already have somebody who is resistant to that drug. Now, this is in Europe, okay? So in Europe, almost all antibiotics, 60 to 70% of all antibiotics are now classified as the microbes are not responding to all these drugs. Erythromycin and vancomycin took some time because one whole bar represents 10 years. So if you look at erythromycin and vancomycin, which we really despise, took almost close to 30 years to develop resistance. We are looking at tetracycline, one of the long-acting tetracycline, ticacycline, was introduced in around 2005, and by 2006 there was resistance. Okay, same with augmentin, imipenem, quinopristine, and danfopristin. I think this drug is used mostly in infective endocarditis. Piperacillin, where we are saying that it is new in Kenya, resistance has already been established in Europe. So this is worrying that now we don't need to wait for 10 years. But if I have a drug introduced in 2022 January, by December there is chance of the same drug being resistant to 1 or 2 microbes. That was next slide. That was in Europe. So now I have some data from the US. This is 2019. 2019. So this is better because it has the drug and the microbe and then the year identified. For the Europe one, I don't have the microbe. This one, I have the microbe. So, and then the other advantage is for this table, I also have antifungals. Let me start with penicillin. Penicillin, let me just read it for you. That's the first one, penicillin, 1941. Year released 1941. But by 1942, this is the pointer. This is the pointer. Oh. I asked whether it is a pointer. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but let me just read it for you. Antibiotic approved or released penicillin 1941. And then penicillin Staphylococcus aureus was the year of resistance for the first patient that was detected to have resistance was in 1942. That is within 1 year, right? For amphotericin B, 1959, and then amphotericin B resistant Candida aureus was in 2016. So that one took some time. Let me just mention the last 3. The last 2, we have daptomycin, very recent, introduced in 2003. And then within a year, we had daptomycin resistant, methicillin resistant Staphylococcus aureus. That was in the US. The one that shocked me was the last one, ceftazidime avibactam, a very new molecule that was just introduced in 2015. But in the same year, we had ceftazidime avibactam resistant Klebsiella pneumoniae. All right. So we are saying that resistance now is occurring within 1 year. There's no guarantee that because you use Zinat in January, that you will still respond to the same. Sorry, I said Zinat, GSK, polemi. Let me use cefuroxime or ceftazidime. There's no hope that a patient will respond to the same at the end of 1 year. So I hope this information is useful to us so that by the time you're managing your patients, you'll think about AMR. In your mind, you'll have information on AMR. Next slide. So this is something that the international community has decided it needs to be addressed. In terms of resistance, there's so much data, and you'll find the same information in Kenya. There's so much data on E. coli saying that we cannot treat E. coli with fluoroquinolones. We can no longer treat E. coli with the third generation cephalosporins. Staph aureus, we can't treat it with methicillin. Neisseria gonorrhoeae, we cannot treat that with the third generation cephalosporins. And then the one that is interesting to me, I think, is Pseudomonas aeruginosa, something that is very common, gram-negative common bacteria in our hospitals. Now it's known to be resistant to carbapenems, amikacin, and ceftazidime. I don't know, but us guys in the hospitals, we've been using ceftazidime for all suspected cases of Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and we've been sparing the common piperacillin tazobactam. So I think now we have to think twice when you are treating a patient who has a Pseudomonas aeruginosa infection. You'll have to think twice. You can't treat them with the likes of what? Carbapenems, classification, what drugs are there? We have what? We have what you have said. We just have what you have said. So, so far, since 2019 up to now, we have 1.27 million deaths that are as a direct result of antibiotic resistance. And that means that in Africa, we have not been left out. In fact, sub-Saharan, we are highest after Southeast, after South Asia. Then after that, North Africa, at least the death rate is slightly slower. So, I mean, slightly lower. So between 2019 up to now, the data that is available with CDC, WHO, is that antibiotic resistance is actually causing 1.27 million deaths annually. All right? And the main, the main infections or the main diseases that are resistant to antibiotics is something we call the common infections in our hospitals. For example, we have pneumonia, all right? Pneumonia, you can't just treat pneumonia with ceftriaxone and azithromycin. Now there are chances of not using those drugs anymore. Bloodstream infections, UTI, tuberculosis, meningitis. I know some of us are used to high dose ceftriaxone 2 grams PD for 14 days, but I'm telling you, in the next 2 years, we will need to sit down and discuss again how we need to manage meningitis, especially with our HIV patients. Typhoid, diarrhea, cardiac infections, bone and joint infections. So what we are saying is that this, we cannot classify them anymore as common infections. Now you need to, when you read anything to do with a bloodstream infection or diarrhea, the first thing you need to have in your mind is antibiotic resistance towards these kind of infections. And I think if you come to a public hospital, including Mama Lucy, you will not miss out on this. In fact, whether you go to OPD or you go to the ward, this is what we are dealing with, okay? If it is not meningitis, it is diarrhea or gastroenteritis, or somebody who has just come out from Geta and have an SSI. So before I go to the next slide, before we discuss the role of the pharmacist in UMS, let me go to the third objective. I don't know whether you have those slides. We need to look at what our AMR surveillance report here in Kenya. Dr. Tanui, together with his team, they managed to do some antimicrobial susceptibility tests in 9 or 8 hospitals. So that's what I want us to. Yeah. Please, Dr. There are 2, I sent 2 presentations. Yeah. Do you want to download them? Yes, that's well. So I just want us to look at this briefly. Maybe you could skip to slide number. I think number. So this is an overview. This is a report. This is something that is very important to us because we've looked at the trends in Europe. We've seen that E. coli, they can't use ceftazidime, they can't use the quinolones. For gonorrhea, they can't use cephalosporins. So we need to look at what is happening in Kenya, in our hospitals. So just move to, yes. So this slide talks about, or rather this slide is a workload that was done between 2019 to 2021 in, I think there were 8 hospitals. There were 8 hospitals. So allow me to use the last column for our presentation today. I think the data analyst, you can tell, we have 2,489, and then the clean data is what? 376 for hospital A. That already is an issue, all right? So it means our records in the hospitals, kuna shida mahali, sivyo? Ama you are not, amoni shida yoyote? Because that's like a third of the, is it an 8th? It's an 8th of 2489. So for today, we're going to be using the total down there, 1,111 as our denominator. So we have 1, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 hospitals. I don't want to talk about whether they're public or private. So we have data from 7 hospitals. So we'll be working with the last column that talks about the clean data. The total there is 1,111 from all the 7 hospitals. So this is all that was isolated, all right? So when you're talking about 320, it means Staphylococcus aureus was isolated in all those hospitals, and the total was 320. And the percentage, 28.8 is 320 divided by 1,111. So the microbe that is number 1 in our hospitals is Staphylococcus aureus, gram-positive, followed by E. coli, followed by Klebsiella, followed by Pseudomonas aeruginosa. Then the last one is Acinetobacter. Is that how you read it? AC or Aki or Kenya is Acinetobacter. And then we will not discuss the last 3 because the numbers are not so significant. Out of 8 hospitals, there is no, okay, there is, there may be a difference if you add up the number of hospitals, but for today, let's look at Staph aureus, E. coli, Klebsiella, Pseudomonas aeruginosa, and Acinetobacter. So the highest there is what? Staph aureus, followed by, in that order. Next. So we'll be looking at the DST results. We will start with Acinetobacter. Let me open my slides here. We will start with Acinetobacter. Just give you time to look at that. So when you're looking at a DST test, you need to have 3 readings: a sensitivity result, intermediate, and resistance. So are we all together? So many amen. All right. So we are looking at sensitivity, resistance, and intermediate. Intermediate means there's possibility the drug will work or not work. Resistance means it will not work at all. And then sensitivity means by the 2nd or the 3rd day, you are supposed to see some clinical improvement from the patient. If they had fever, fever is gone. If there's diarrhea is gone, and the likes. So let's look at that Acinetobacter. So what do you think was the highest, what do you think was the resistant pattern in 8 hospitals? So the highest was the Pharmacists as a pattern. It was at, can we see the one? So the blue reading is resistance. So those are the back. The orange one is intermediate, and then the gray bar is sensitivity. So the blue one says that when you treat a patient who has an Acinetobacter infection, they cannot respond to piperacillin tazobactam. Are we together? Are we together? And then same with imipenem, then followed by gentamicin, all right? So it means for that patient, you need to use what? Amikacin. All right, that's how we read the results, the DST results. So what does that tell you as a pharmacist? Anyone? We're in trouble. Yeah, so imagine there's a bag out there that is not responding to piperacillin tazobactam. And then our good friends, the prescribers, they actually like meropenem. I remember there's a day my dad was admitted at Aga Khan for a very small infection. So the first day I went there, T-sheet million and 2 meropenem, 1 gram TDS. So I was very mad. I was very, very angry. I was like, this thing is actually real. So imipenem and piperacillin and gentamicin cannot be used. Meropenem is not also so far. But for this patient, you need to use what? You need to consider amikacin and meropenem. It's almost 50-50, all right? Moving on for Staph aureus. Staph aureus is not new to us. We all know we have studies, I think a few in Africa, where Staph aureus has been confirmed to be resistant to penicillin G, cotrimoxazole, and most of the drugs there. But now, if your patient has an infection from Staphylococcus aureus, you need to consider oxacillin, gentamicin. So this is a bit mixed up. Huh? It's more or less like 50-50. But for penicillin G, you cannot ignore, okay? But when you're talking about treatment, you might need to consider oxacillin, gentamicin, clindamycin, tetracycline, and the rest. So this one is not so bad, all right? Let's talk about E. coli. I told you in Europe, they're not using what? Fluoroquinolones, right? So the same case with us here in Kenya from the 9 facilities. You can't use ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, and some of the cephalosporins. Can you see the cephalosporins after piperacillin tazobactam? All right, so that means when a patient has E. coli, what do you use from our graph? Imagine. Now we are talking about meropenem. So the AMR error is real. It is here with us. So when you have a patient coming to you, they have UTI, umewapes, ciprofloxacin IV, wamekaa hospitali, just know that that bag is resistant to fluoroquinolones. I'm not saying you start that immediately. What we are advocating for is do a DST, get your DST results, and look at the 3 bars, intermediate, sensitive, and resistant patterns for E. coli. So we are saying that now E. coli, we are using is more sensitive to meropenem, imipenem, and piperacillin tazobactam, all right? But the rest is 50-50. There's a chance that if you pick a patient, they may or may not respond to what, like now ceftriaxone, ceftazidime, and cefepime. So the ones that are 50-50, there is possibility of response. But the ones that have, like now you look at imipenem, you just have to go for imipenem, all right? Klebsiella. Next slide is Klebsiella. Klebsiella, we can't complain much. There's low resistance, sensitivity is high, so you can pick on any of those drugs. For Pseudomonas aeruginosa, we are saying that we are not also doing so badly. We can use either amikacin. Amikacin is very cheap. We can also use some of the cephalosporins. So I think our worry should be, as pharmacists, is this is data for 2019-2021. Do you think if I did the same surveillance in 2020 25, am I correct? 2023 to 2025, do you think the pattern will be the same? Why not? Because now we are bragging here, saying that Pseudomonas aeruginosa, you see the way the sensitivity patterns are very high, resistant pattern is low. So what do you think will happen in 2025? If the person who is in school right now comes to do the same presentation I've done, what do you think will happen? Nataka kusikia watu wakiongea. Will it be low, intermediate, or high? It will be higher, all right? We've said that AMR patterns right now, I think I've shown you what is happening in Europe and US. Resistance is there, even within 1 year, time lag of a time period of 1 year. You have the drug January by December, chances of resistance, very high. Next slide, I just want to show you some point prevalence surveys that were also done. Hospital A, of course, this is obvious, it's a public hospital. We always have ceftriaxone. We don't do expectant anymore. Senor, everyone is on ceftriaxone. Even before the CBC is out. Not that CBC for, is another CBC for the lab. Before it is out, everyone is on ceftriaxone, either a flagyl or something like that. So for Hospital A, that is the data that was available. For Hospital B, we have Hezron. Hospital B, we have benzyl penicillin is the second one. I think this is a Pete's hospital. Ceftriaxone, benzyl penicillin, and gentamicin. Then the last hospital, Hospital X, Hezron. Hospital X, that's the last one. We have ceftriaxone, gentamicin. So it looks like a Pete's hospital. So what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? Do you think Kenyans will respond to ceftriaxone? Especially you had 5 admissions, flagyl, gentamicin. What do you think will be the resistance patterns for these 3 drugs? I'm just putting a question out. I am not prophesying. Do you think Kenyans will respond to this? Yes or no? We've seen our consumption report. Is it a yes or no? So let's go back to my other presentation. I'm going to briefly discuss the role of a pharmacist in AMS, and then you'll agree with me that this is what that is expected of us in our various working stations. I decided to do this based on my experience at work, what I desire of Mama Lucy Kibaki Hospital. The previous slide, the other one. So there's some books that were launched by Ministry of Health some time back, I think last year, early last year or this year. One of them is a diagnostic stewardship clinician handbook. It says their diagnostic stewardship program. And basically when the patient comes to the hospital, if a patient needs to be admitted, not outpatient, the pharmacist, whether you're a clinical pharmacist or pharmacovigilance, in your own way, you need to be involved. So if a patient presents with possible infectious problems, you need to be involved from the word go. So at that point, the lab comes in. They're supposed to do some microbiological diagnosis. At this point, you need to know whether it is viral, fungal, or bacterial. Okay, why? Because that time when people had COVID, I think everyone went ahead and used azithromycin. Yeah, so it's important to know whether you have a viral infection, whether you just need cold cap, or you actually need antibiotics. So that part is very important. So if you're suspecting that the patient to be having a bacterial infection, of course, you'll be working together with a medical officer and a physician. Now you can go ahead and do empirical treatment, right? But once the culture and DST results are out, you need to revisit the treatment plan and then act accordingly. Why am I saying that? Because for the empirical treatment guidelines, most of them advocate the use of broad antibiotics. So you might not need to change that, but as time goes by, if you find that now you're having a trend of patients where they're having drugs that are not covered in the empirical treatment guidelines, it needs now your intervention, and that means changing the treatment, or rather the treatment work plan for that patient. Remember, we've said that AMR is causing what? A lot of delayed, a lot of hospitals, patients are staying in the hospital for a longer time than expected. So I'll finish by saying that we also need to participate in AMR surveillance. That is the data that we have today was because of some of us have taken their role, active role in AMS. We need to understand the patterns of the bags that are there in the market, in the hospitals and in the community pharmacies. The other thing is we need to advocate for clinical labs. So we are saying that we just don't want labs that are doing cultures, but we want a culture in a DST, all right? We also need to develop our own antibiograms, so that at the end of the month, you need to have a workload for your AMR patterns in the hospital. It's important to have antibiograms because that is evidence to the hospital administration that you can no longer work with the list of antibiotics that have been, cancer list right now. Some of those antibiotics need to be reviewed and revisited. So the need for having antibiograms in our hospitals is because you need to change either the hospital formulary or put funds aside to buy some of those drugs that are not in the hospital. A lot of our public hospitals don't have empirical treatment guidelines. CPO. I don't know how many hospitals have their treatment guidelines, so there is need for that. And lastly is gaps in research, all right? So next slide. I think I will share my slides with all of you. These are some of the policies that were launched in between 2019 and now. The interesting thing is that, let me use the next slide for that. You see that part for developed AMS training curriculum, basic and advanced. So you don't have to sit down, you don't need to have a headache of what am I going to tell people. You just need to go and pick that and now train your healthcare workers, the nurses, the MOs, the clinicians, the physicians. You just need to tell them that this is what AMR is all about. And because at the end of the day, you just don't want to be dealing with antibiotics alone. There is something called collective responsibility, okay? So I think the rest we can read on our own. These are some of the achievements that the Pharmacy and Poisons Board has managed to do together with the Ministry of Health. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. You know, when we went to the conference, somebody came there and said, tell us what pharmacists do. Here is the answer. Oh. This is what pharmacists do. This is what we do. This is our place. It's not 2 by 3. This is our place. So when somebody comes and asks you, what do pharmacists do? Tell them to call Dr. Sarah. Oh. Very good presentation. Thank you. How many of us we go to a wedding? How many of us go to weddings? Only one. Only I goes to a wedding. Nobody else goes to a wedding. Are you guys not invited or what? So, you know, us younger guys, when we go to a wedding, we're always told, you are next, you are next. Next time you go to a wedding and some auntie or some shosho tells you are next, just say when you go to a funeral, you tell them you are next. Okay, I think we'll take 1 or 2 questions. Before we go online, yes.
Thanks, Winnie and Sarah. Sarah, congratulations. Nice presentation, and Winnie as well. I don't have a question, but just follow-up comments on the 2 presentations. The first comment is on Winnie's presentation. and she highlighted the issue of counterfeit medicines. Right now, if there's anybody out here in the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, there's an emerging area where antibiotics are being dispensed online in online pharmacies. I have actually personally conducted a study. I'm writing a manuscript to publish. A lot of those online pharmacies, from our findings on that study, are not regulated. They don't have PPB codes or anything, and people can just add antibiotics to the cart and sell them. So much as we're really trying to combat AMR within our hospitals, and we're doing a very good job within hospitals, we need to target community pharmacy and also look at what we can do in the online pharmacies, because that one really it will actually just cancel out the efforts that are being done in hospital and bring worse patients to the hospital. Again, stewardship efforts we should actually think about doing very serious stewardship efforts within the community pharmacy setting, because that's where we have a very huge gap. The other thing is that Sarah mentioned there's a paucity of labs that are doing DSTs, but we're part of the Fleming Fund working with, we're part of the Fleming Fund grant working with the Ministry of Health and many facilities, and we've been able to actually fund very good labs and very good machines in 7 hospitals in the country. So you can look for that information from me, and we can see how we can support some of the hospitals, because the Fleming Fund is still ongoing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Question or comment? Here we go.
Dr. Sarah has painted a very gloomy picture of hospitals. And some of us run an outpatient facility last 11 years. Some of the way the picture is painted, it's as if there is a serious problem in the inpatient facilities. So before we even think it's a will it be an infection control problem? Are those patients coming with those infections, or they are hospital acquired? Then the problem is not the antibiotic. It is getting the infection control processes. They seem to be so poor in our opinion, and maybe if you take on that one before we just say it's the antibiotic resistance. That's just my comment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maniki. The information we have right now, we cannot ignore the fact that AMR is here with us. That's number one. The reason why I decided to share the trends in US and Europe is because we need to admit that we are actually in an era of AMR. However, that does not put us in a place where we are not defending ourselves and ignoring that IPC is an issue. IPC is an issue. When I was in primary, when I was in secondary, for these public hospitals, and that is why I actually highlighted that point number one for IPC, for us especially at Commemoration, is exercise. The patient will come very well, but by the time they're leaving the theater, they've picked something else. So hospital acquired infections, maybe somebody needs to do a study on hospital acquired infections versus community acquired infections to see where these bugs are really coming from. But as for E. coli and Staph aureus, I just want to confirm that most of those infections are actually hospital acquired. And that is number 1, 2, and 3. For Pseudomonas and Aeruginosa, I'm not quite sure. But for the first 2, it's actually been confirmed that it is hospital acquired.
So can I add on that? The data that was presented by Serah was actually surveillance data. Sorry. The data presented by Serah is very authentic data that we conducted as Fleming Fund in conjunction with Ministry of Health and the selected 7 hospitals. So it's not about IPC, but it's actually the real resistance patterns that are there. So if we have observed that in 7 hospitals, you can imagine if we are doing that across the country. It could be worse across the country, but also IPC is an issue. And I know within the national AMS team, which I'm part of, we are also working very strongly to strengthen IPC within hospitals.
Okay, Dr. Kagwa, you know, we have so many intellectuals here and nobody wants to be left out. So Dr. Kagwa, one comment, then Dr. Karate can chop it off. One more comment.
Yes, I need to put on a meeting. So thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Winnie. Yes, you are right. Some of us are very passionate about antimicrobial resistance, but I want to also support Dr. Monique, what you are saying. Yes, I was also part of this data that was collected in the 7 sites. And the TICA 5, I think, is one of the hospitals that has been supported by the Fleming Fund. But I think this study, Sarah, is you are right, it has focused more on the HAIs. But when you go to the community, what Monique was referring to, the IPC issue, I think it's something that we have not done a lot of studies in the community. Last year, we did the studies, I presented in the PSK complex for Kilifi, Bungoma, Kiambu, and another 4 is on citizen-generated data on antimicrobial use. And when you do that study, remember we were doing it in our health approach, not only in the human side. Human side has a lot of stories. People sharing their medication, not finishing. But what I came to realize, even is, I think Sarah mentioned about chicken farming. I think it's Winnie or Serah. Chicken and pig farming. The moment you don't dispose those droppings of those animal properly, you are doing AMR in a farm. So it's a very complicated thing, but I want to support someone. These things is also being contributed by issues of IPC in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kagwa.
I think, thank you, Sarah. Winnie, I think we have learned a lot. I just wanted to give us hope. There wasn't such as sometimes we may die when you are sitting. So I think we need that facility individualized study so that it's going to mind. Because sometimes I think my boss is there, Dr. Kao. Every day I give 100 patients amoxicillin for the last 1 year. And no one ever do the one but Yapona. So sometimes like Dr. Monique is asking, where is this resistance then? Actually, the way it is coming out. You buy or not? What we say we no longer treat gonorrhea with and what on In fact, when I'm treating gonorrhea, I give the patient guarantee and pay it down. So what am I? We don't see significant results by June. We don't appreciate person.
So I think in patients there's actually that problem. And again, as pharmacists, we need to be close to prescribers. As doctors say, you find the first patient has been introduced to medicine, okay, without proper medication review. How many antibiotics this patient has been exposed for the last 10 years or 5 years? And remember, in pharmacy, we know that resistance comes as a result of frequent exposure. So we don't have that kind of history in prescribing patterns. And you realize again, since we started doing MRI, according to research, Dr. Mendes, I don't see prescribers changing the prescribing patterns, even at community. We need to be sincere, isn't it? From KNH Doctors Plaza all the way, I don't see them changing the prescribing pattern. So I don't know whether it's the target, I don't know what is that, or they are not taking it seriously. So before we go to community level, from the health worker perspective, what are we investing in them? Are they taking it serious? Okay. So I think we need to look at that so that when the investment value for the money for the microbial campaign is giving results from we, the healthcare workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, on that framing. So we want to wind up with a presentation from GSK. Dr. Bao gave me a nickname, I'm not going to use that, but if the presenter from GSK is Rebecca. So while she's coming up, I want to recognize Dr. James Wender, Chief of Public Economics, USA. KWA for us. Gone. Okay. Dr. Stephen Kigera Metz, also gone. There we are. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Figueroa. Dr. Hamla is already spoken, so you have got him from online. Dr. Kelly Oloch, CEO, KMDC. Thank you very much. More than once. Dr. George Mugi, Nairobi Branch Chair. Dr. Maina is going to dance for us later on.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the presenters and for being an active audience. So I know I'm standing in between you and dinner, but I'll take 8 minutes precisely. Yeah. I'm representing GSK. My name is Rebecca Mutete. I'm a product advisor in GSK. And I'm here to cement what the two doctors have talked about, AMR, and also to put a name on the amoxiclav that Dr. Winnie has been mentioning. So most of us are very proud to be associated with the University of UON or University of Nairobi. So the same way, I would like also to be proud to mention that we have the Augmentin, which GSK is also proud to be associated with. So I'm here to ensure that you give confidence in every dose that you give to your patient by giving Augmentin. And this is why we are calling Augmentin the Augmentin. Yeah, so we are very proud to be celebrating 40 years of experience in the market. And I guess right now we are 41. And during those 40 years, we've done a lot. We have had 179 million treatments, courses taken annually in the whole world, globally. And we're also present in over 100 countries. And also we've been constantly innovating, augmenting because of convenience dosaging and to combat AMR as well. So also we offer you a broad antibiotic, a broad spectrum antibiotic, which can be used for most cases of upper respiratory tract infections, skin infections, and also dental infections. So this is how we have constantly innovated Augmentin. So I know we started in early 1981, we started with the ratio of 2:1. So these ratios represent the ratio of amoxicillin content versus clavulanic, the combination. So 2:1, if you remember well, we have a formulation of Augmentin 375, right? Yes, so it falls under 2:1. But within the 40 years, we have innovatively moved the ratios to the highest, which is 14:1, which you will see in our next slide. And this is because, number one, we want to improve in terms of convenience in dosaging. This one was the TDS. Now the rest are BD. So it will be very convenient for those patients who are probably working or the school-going kids. Then again, we are also trying to combat resistance. Instead of moving to other molecules, we have increased the amoxicillin content to ensure that you treat your patient dependent on the severity of the infection. So that's why we have the 1 gram for severe infections, or the Augmentin ES, which has a ratio of 14:1 for severe cases. Again, we also have variety of formulations that you can offer to your patients, and that's why we have constantly been improving Augmentin in the last 40 years. Yeah, I won't dwell on this a lot. Dr. Winnie has done it justice. So as GSK, we have ensured quality of
Thank you. Okay, together 1 minute.
So, good evening, colleagues. Student here is my name. I work for MEDS, Mission for Essential Drugs and Supplies. I am the quality department there. So it's a very interesting discussion. And as a faith-based fraternity, I think we sent here. And as MEDS, we like to associate ourselves with quality. We're driven by quality, and yeah, we basically want to support, especially manufacturers like GSK, who are quality minded. And yeah, so I just want to wish you a nice evening. And yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Giga.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good evening, everyone. So, couple of things I wanted to say. Thank you so much for being here. I am proud to be a pharmacist, proud to be among you, and proud to serve you. 3 things. When we're talking about antimicrobial resistance, wow. Appropriate prophylaxis is an issue. Prior pre-surgery, that's something that has to be looked at. What protocols do we have for that? Has to be looked at. And then the last one why I'm actually standing here is because we are all pharmacists and we all have this information. We are looking for a way to share it. So we have a blog that we started where what you see, you share. We don't want to know patient information, but what you see, if you see a resistance, if something happened in your hospital or facility that is unique, share it with us, because when we share that, your colleague will see that and probably will help with patient care. The other thing is when you share, we form data that actually can inform even GSK and other manufacturers to know what they need to bring into the market. And last but not least, this is your organization. PSK is yours. We are open and willing to change and to do anything we can to make sure that we serve you as the members of the organization. So I am open, everybody at PSK is open to listen, to understand what is it that we need to do to make sure that you're proud of this organization that you're a member of. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I always heard that the definition of a mistress is what is between a mattress and a master. This is the first time I'm hearing of a cake mistress, so our cake mistress, take it over.
You know this guy, eh? Have you ever noticed? Like, it doesn't matter where we are. There is just something he'll say, and you'll go like, what? Are you guys ever like me? I interact with him, then I'm like, please don't say anything, please don't say anything. Then he says something, and I'm like, wow. Anyway, for those who don't know me, my name is Angeline, and I am hungry. I bet you all are, right? So, you know, first of all, I don't know if this is gender, what is that? Yes, at my workplace, my boss told me, you know, you need to get to a place where the normal domestic roles that women carry out at home, they should never ever carry that out in the office. So yeah, I agree 100%, but then there's cake. I love cake. So we're going to cut cake, right? So I've gone to many weddings and they say things like, oh, Najoi, peko na mafuta. What's the other thing? Milk, na mayai. You've gone to some of this. Eh? They say, na upendo. And what else? Anyway, so this is just a culmination. This evening is about culminating the long week, amazing fun things that we've done. All the 17 branches have come through, and they have come through massively. Have you all seen? Yeah? And next time, we'll do it even bigger. I had the privilege of hanging out with the young students. Yeah. Future PSK members, eh? I had the privilege of hanging out with them over the weekend in JQuat. That place is big. No one told me I'd walk that much, but I had fun. And what was the university that won? Ati? It was MKU.
The dean is here.
Eh? Oh, the dean is here. Dr. Ngoma. Are you aware your university won? So it was a really, really good time. And I loved the spirit. I saw over 500 young pharmacists. People in the pipeline coming. I assume it was that because we were how many universities? 10? 8 universities. Can you imagine? 8 universities. You should have read the energy in that room. Like competitive, excited, knowledgeable. They were doing things about compounding. I can't remember. You know, when Dr. Winnie and Dr. Serah were talking over here, I was just asking myself, well, I don't know what they're saying, but it's good things. The last time I had to do anything, I was 10 years, 15 years ago. But I'm glad. I'm just waiting for this very, very able people to help me set up so that we can have the cake. So, you ready? Okay. So, in my other life, I tried to be a praise and worship person. And I used to love singing. So I want to bring energy to the room. I want us to all sing. And we are going to sing to cut this cake here, right? And I want the president to come. We're cutting cake, yeah. And the CEO come. We cut cake. You're going to cut the cake for us. I'm going to sing.
Are you the cake match?
Yes, the cake match one.
So for those who have not gone to that space. Oh, Manasio or something.
Hey, karibu sana.
Can we introduce Manasio?
Hey.
Since the PSK.
Hey.
Yeah, those are the people doing the pastures on that side. This is a nice place to come and enjoy and talk about cake. Yeah, it's a nice place to come in and talk about cake. I know for those online, you have loved to really enjoy what we're having. But look for a friend who's here, and maybe they can carry a piece for you. Yeah, so what else are we doing?
They're supposed to sing. Okay. So, msikize sauti tafadhali, msikize maneno. Anyway, which one is the common one? Is it kata keki tukule sasa? Here you are trial. Now we start officially. Nani ako na sauti tena? You know the tenor voice. It carries very well. So this is me trying to get the men to cut the cake. No women, eh? Let's start. Kata keki tukule sasa. Kata keki tukule sasa. Kata keki tukule sasa. I feel like it doesn't start from there. What does it start from? Oh, kata. You guys, you should be dancing. So that's the end of it, yeah? Now we go and eat.
All right, thank you very much, pharmacists. Thank you, Bonacillo. I guess somebody will cut this cake. So take a slice, and thank you for coming, and thank you to GSK for sponsoring this event. And until next time, kwaheri ya kuonana. Thank you.
Okay, so we have to eat the cake here. Yeah, see, guys, please.
Did you spoil the appetite? Oh, okay.
Julie, Lucia, Sheila.
Yeah, guys,